Hi guys, how you doing? So, it's lovely to see you all. I've just come back from the least relaxing holiday ever. My children are fabulous, however, I have to be honest with you, not enjoying the social distancing stuff. Planning restaurants, planning parks, planning events, wearing a face mask. My grumpy, people-loving heart did not enjoy that. However, still very privileged. So, it's lovely to see you all. Glad to be back. Today, we are talking about social anxiety. I put a bit of a shout out for this before I went on holiday, and whenever I talk about anxiety, it blows me away a little bit. But this time I was really blown away by some of the messages I got. People that you would just not expect to have any kind of anxiety at all, riddled with it. And I know what that's like because people say that a lot about me. So if we start with what is social anxiety? Social anxiety is not feeling a bit nervous when you're going out. Social anxiety is really struggling with how other people perceive you, and as a result, taking action that might be negative for your life because of it, without really knowing whether there's a need for it or not. It's got its roots in control, like all anxiety. Everybody thinks it's because you really want other people to like you, and there is a degree of that, and we will come on to why. But actually, the bigger part of it is controlling the perception of yourself, controlling where you sit in the world, not feeling unsafe, not feeling threatened, being able to control that. And as we know, because we've covered it before, control is an illusion. Doesn't mean we don't still want it. How do we do that? How does it show up? I asked a few people this, and they've all said to me, might be someone who doesn't want to go out, who makes excuses when they're supposed to be going out, who maybe drinks a bit too much when they're out, or is a bit nervous or anxious. All of those things are true, but that's not necessarily what social anxiety looks like in the real world. It can look like someone who is very confident. It can look like someone who is a perfectionist, who is maybe very perfectionistic about how they look. Most of the women I know who are obsessively neat and expect to look a certain way and want to look a certain way, actually they're doing it as a form of security. It's like a suit of armour. So we assume a certain look as a shield from other people's judgment. It's a form of social anxiety. You might be perfectionist about your career or your aspirations. You might be telling yourself and other people that actually you don't need social contact. You're focused on your career and your job and your work, and that's the only thing that matters to you. You might bully. You might be a bitch. You might be a bit of a queen bee and call all of these people around you who can do your dirty work for you because you don't feel safe and you need that tribal sense to shore you up because your own identity isn't strong enough. You might be fawning, you might be very people-pleasing, you might be someone who, tells people all the time how wonderful they are or how funny they are, even though you don't really think that because you're desperate for them to like you. That's very common in autistic women. And you might have an increased disconnection from your sense of self as a result of all of those things. What tends to happen is as we assume different identities in different situations to try and make people like us rather than recognise who we are, we lose our sense of self. So very often when you get people who are saying things like, I don't know who I am anymore. I don't know what I like. I don't know how to be. I don't know what I want. That comes from assuming too many masks for too long a period of time. You lose connection with what matters to you in your pursuit of being liked above everything else and being accepted socially. There are people who will deliberately use their appearance as a way of separating themselves from society. Still the same thing as fitting yourself in by looking perfect. It's all about creating an identity and a mask that makes you feel safe. But it's not about living the truth of who you are and being accepted for who you are. So we end up feeling sad or depressed or increasingly concerned. Now what happens over the years is, like with all anxieties, it feeds on itself. So you might have one situation where you felt uncomfortable. Maybe you were bullied at school, and as an adult you're still carrying a lot of that. But what happens is your anxiety and your fear rooted there becomes bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger, and your life or your circle of friends or your ability to know who you are gets smaller and smaller and smaller as a result of it. So it's really important that we start to tackle this. In terms of numbers, before anybody says, well, it's a bit of a trend or whatever, isn't it? 1 in 3 women experiences some form of social anxiety. I would say, given anecdotal evidence, that it's closer to 1 in 2. In fact, I'd say that almost every single woman I know has experienced some form of social anxiety. That's because society pits women against each other. And it's really sad for me that so many of us are so scared about getting it wrong and not being liked, not being accepted, that we've developed this kind of collective fear as a populace of not being accepted and liked, when actually we all feel like that. It's something that we all experience. And there's this whole stigma around it too. There's still very much a stigma in saying I have social anxiety. Really? Why? Is there something wrong with you? Are you a bit weak? Are you a bit self-obsessed? Possibly. In my case, maybe a little bit. Massive ego, what can I say? But no, we all experience it. And there's a reason for that. It's because we are tribal. I've explained this before. Throughout history, throughout our evolution, our ability to survive depended on our ability to be accepted within the tribe. If we did not fit into the tribe, our actual survival was put hugely at risk. And obviously, as humans are hierarchical and tribes are hierarchical, the higher up the tribe you went, by being more liked, by being more accepted, by being more attractive, whatever, meant that your life was more comfortable and your survival rates were much higher. So we all have an innate primed drive to be liked. It's not something that makes us weak. It's what makes us human. Connection and the need to belong is hardwired into us. There's an old phrase that the cure for addiction is not taking in the substance, it's connection. And that's very true. Very true. Humans need to connect with one another. And if we don't connect with one another, or we feel like we can't connect with one another, we feel like there's something missing. So what do? How does that work? What does that look like for us? Well, it means that if we think we're not going to be accepted, we definitely will try and withdraw. We might get angry, we might get aggressive. If you've been rejected for whatever reason, you can feel that almost like a pain. And there's a reason for that. It's biological. The shame that comes with a sense of rejection actually affects the same pain receptors in our brain as, for instance, an injury or a backache. So whenever you think of a big rejection or a big hurt, you'll feel it like a physical pain. Your entire body can clench up and you'll really know that pain. That's physical. It's real. It's not an imagined pain. It's not a sense of embarrassment. It's an actual physical pain that has actually been measured in terms of being treated with painkillers. Now, don't do that for God's sake. You go out, some girl you thought was going to be your bestie decides she doesn't like you. Don't come home and neck a load of painkillers to sort it out. That's not the long-term solution. But it just goes to show that it's real. You're not imagining it. And it comes from, again, that need for survival, that instinct to be included, to be part of the tribe. So what do we do? Well, I'm not going to tell you some crappy cliche about how you need to love yourself. I actually think loving ourselves all the time is bullshit. I don't think it's possible. I think it's an unrealistic aim, and I think that all the self-help journals that say that's the way to go actually just put more shame on us as humans, because then you're like, well, I don't love myself. I can't even get that right. Get comfortable with yourself. That's it. Just get comfortable with yourself for a start. Aim to be comfortable as often as you can. That's fine. Stop and ask yourself a question. If you're going into a situation with a group of people, I remember I had one, I think I've spoken about this briefly before, but it was in my early 30s. Throughout my 20s, I socially withdrew. So I had a couple of friends who'd been in my life for a long time, and that was it. I didn't want anybody else around. I just couldn't deal with it. I was really awkward. And then in my early 20s, I had a breakdown, and it was very, very difficult. And the result of that for me was to completely socially withdraw until I felt like I knew who I was a little bit more. And then in my early 30s, I went into a group of friends, and I made a lot of the same mistakes that I'd made as a teenager, because I still hadn't learned not to, because I hadn't been exposed to it. So I tried a little bit too hard. I assumed that I needed to fit in when maybe I didn't. I would do things that they liked that I wasn't interested in, and I changed my own sense of self to be liked. And for a little while it worked. But I became increasingly anxious about the rules of the group, and I realised that I wasn't being accepted in the group, and there was some stuff going on that maybe wasn't the best. And it was really painful for me at the time. There were weekends where I would literally be ripped apart with anxiety over myself, going, what have I done? Why don't they like me? What is wrong with me? Why can't people accept me? These people like me and now they don't. Why am I not getting it right? And what I never asked myself in that whole time was, do I like these people? And when I did answer that, the question was, apart from one of them, who was my original friends and I liked very much? The answer was no. I don't even know who they are, and I don't want to. And when I learned to do that, when I learned to go into any situation with the question, do I like these people? Everything changed for me socially. At that stage, I thought I was going to withdraw again. And now I'm here 8 years later, and I have a massive group of very disparate, unusual, brilliant, wonderful people in my life I'm so grateful for. And every single one of them are in my life because I've looked at them and gone, I really like you, and I'm really glad you're here. Now, going into a situation where people don't know you and feeling nervous about one thing and asking if they like you, if you like them, is okay, and that will make a massive difference for you. For me, my big trigger is still if I really like somebody and I think we're going to be friends, and then they go, I don't like you, or they withdraw or go, well, I don't feel the same. I have ADHD, so I'm very much like, once I meet someone, I'm like, yay, besties, we're going to be friends forever, I love you so much, it's fabulous. And they're still a little bit like, and your surname was? So I experienced that a little bit more than I probably should do for a 38-year-old woman. But there was one situation I can think of in particular where I did meet someone, I just loved them. I just thought they were brilliant, funny and clever and right up my street, and they didn't feel the same way about me at all. And it was really sad. The thing to do in that situation is not be a bitch about it. It's really hard not to be. It's really hard not to take that rejection personally. Your shame receptors are hit. But what you need to do in that situation is just accept that not everyone is going to like you. And it's just the way of the world. You will never be a person that everybody likes. It's not possible. We are tribal. We are all different types of people. And trying to make everybody like you means that you will tie yourself in such knots trying to be different people to be accepted. You will lose sight of yourself. You'll lose sight of who you are. And then you won't be liked because you won't be authentic. And we can smell inauthenticity a mile off. So just don't go there. You like somebody else. They didn't feel the same. That's okay. We have a right to choose who we do and don't like. You have to let that go and make room in your life for the people who do. Focus on the facts. Am I a trash fire dumpster person that everybody hates? You might feel like it in the moment of rejection, but the answer is probably no. Think about spending time with the people who do like you. Reassert your sense of resilience in those situations, and you will feel better about it. It will always be a little bit painful to experience that. It's just human nature, but it's okay. It doesn't mean you're a bad person, and it doesn't mean they're a bad person. It just means you're not a fit, even if you really wanted to be. What else can you do? Don't drink alcohol as a way of fitting in. I know that that's really tempting. I know that it can feel like liquid confidence. Alcohol and drugs do make socialising easier. And I don't mind telling you that in my teens, that was my go-to when I really didn't know how to behave. And the result of that was a problem. Humans exist in a permanent state of what we call homeostasis. Now, homeostasis is a really poncy way of saying balance. So when you drink something like alcohol, which relaxes you and might make you feel better in the first instance, the result of that is your body will swing to try and rebalance it. And the swing will look like increased anxiety and stress and fear the next day. So you'll get what we call beer fear. And the beer fear will come from two places. One, your body desperately trying to rebalance itself, so swinging too far the other way to put itself back into balance. And two, the fact that you've probably been a twat, because we all are when we're drunk. If you look around a room full of drunk people, they think they're hilarious and funny and brilliant, and those moments are brilliant if you're in there. But actually, if you're a sober person watching them, you just think, oh God, what is going on with these humans? Because we speak slower, we're not as funny, we're just knobheads when we're drunk. That's okay. In moderation, it's okay to do that sometimes, but if you're using that as your strategy to cope and get through, you're going to develop a problem quite rapidly, especially if your sense of self-identity is quite weak. It's much better to maybe just start a bit smaller. If you need to go to a party, take somebody you know with you. Have a strategy, have some questions that you can ask people so you can kind of sit back with a bit of a plan, but don't make that plan alcohol and drugs, because long term it's not an answer to anything. Try and drop the people-pleasing thing. Don't be a mug. I have lost count, and actually it's one of my biggest flaws, and I've been called on this quite recently too. Lost count of the amount of people who do loads and loads of things for other people, and then they get upset because they don't get it back. That's not, and they'll say things to you, by the way, like, it's because I'm just a nice person, and I don't really understand why so many people treat me badly. People aren't treating you badly. You haven't created a bargain with that person. You haven't negotiated that. So you haven't said, right, I'm going to do this for you, and in return, I'd like your friendship and your time. You've gone, oh, I'm going to do this for you and I don't want anything in return, but you get nothing back. And then you feel resentful because you get nothing back. It's because you weren't doing it to be nice. You were doing it because you wanted something back, but you hadn't made that clear. In an ideal world, we could all go, I'd like to be your friend. Would you like to be my friend? And the other person will go, yes, I would like to be your friend. Or they might go, no, can't fucking stand you, piss off. And we know where we stand with that, but humans don't work that way. It would be way too easy. We call those people autistics. They have a much easier way of communicating than we do it sometimes, believe you me. If we took that into our real world, it would sometimes make life much into our world. Sorry, not our real world, because the autistic world's very real, but in a neurotypical sense, if we took that into our world, it would be much easier for most of us to function. But we just don't do it that way, do we? We're not that honest. We're not that straight. We play games. We manipulate situations. We feel insecurities and it doesn't happen. So instead, don't try to make bargains or deals with other people that they haven't actually agreed to. If you're going to offer something to somebody, a favour, a deal, a consideration, do it with love, do it with generosity, do it with openness, but don't do it because you think you're going to get something out of it. That's not how it works. It's not real friendship. What else can we do? You can activate your vagus nerve. Sounds quite rude, that, doesn't it? But the vagus nerve is basically a nerve that, when activated, will help you manage feelings of anxiety and depression. Do some research on it. I'm going to do a video on it in the future. There are lots of ways to activate it. The two best ones are having a cold shower. Not for me, thanks very much. I'm well aware of the myriad of benefits of it. Can't think of anything worse, not going to happen. Or you can get physical, be physically active and be busy, and that can help. Or you can sing. Singing is a great way to activate your vagus nerve. If I'm having a bad day, I will turn on the stereo, I will sing very loudly. I'm amazed I haven't got an ASBO, but that's what I do. Don't sing in public ever, but for myself, I do it. It activates the nerve, and that will activate your response to anxiety and depression and discomfort in a way that will be much more soothing and healthy for you long term. What else? So you're someone with no friends at all, and you don't know why. It does not mean you are a trash fire human that everybody hates. It does not mean that you are worthless. It doesn't mean that you are unlikable. It just means that there are some skills that you haven't learnt yet. Get some help. Ask someone trusted to tell you what you're doing wrong. Think about it. We teach children the skills in reading and writing and listening, but just like some children don't get those skills straight away, some children and adults don't get social skills, don't understand reciprocity, don't understand when to say something and when not to say something, don't understand, how to be in a group of people. Those skills can be learned if you want to, and it's okay to ask for help with that. It's not you getting something wrong, it just means you haven't learned it yet. So go and learn it, that's okay. Don't crawl. Now, I've spoken about people who maybe don't like me. If those people then turn around, and I've accepted that they don't like me, and that's fine. If those people turn around 6 months later and they're like, we love you now, I'll be like, no. Don't allow people to come in and out of your life and mess with you in that sense. It can be really easy if you're someone with a weak sense of self-esteem and social anxiety to cling to somebody who might like you. In fact, sometimes that plays into our own neediness and our own issues. So we'll become a little bit codependent on it. Bollocks. If someone likes you, they like you. If they don't, they don't. Don't let people mess with you. Don't let people give you a sense that they'd like you more if you were somebody else or did something different. If somebody likes you, they like you, just the way you are. If they don't, they're not worth it. Doesn't make them bad, doesn't make you bad, but they're not worth it. Walk. You have every right to. And understand that it's not personal. Go look for someone you love. Be really, really brave. And if you've got really severe social anxiety, this next bit is going to be killer tough for you. But you can do it online if you want to. What do you love? Might be cats, might be working out, might be paddleboarding, you might not have a fucking clue. Go and find out. There are myriad online groups and clubs, there are offline ones. Go do new stuff. Go meet new people. Say hello. Start a conversation. People might reject you. People might not. The likelihood is, if you find another group of people who love something you love, even if it's something really, really random, that's your tribe. Those are your people. So they are going to, statistically, be much more like you, and you're going to be much more accepted. But you have to be really brave to do that. So maybe have a cold shower first and have a go. See how you feel about it. Looking for a tribe is part of what makes us human, but it means being really honest about what matters to you and what's important to you. If you like the finer works of Jane Austen, there's 100% a club somewhere for people who like the finer works of Jane Austen, and we'll discuss it for hours and hours and hours, even if everybody else, finds it boring. Don't try to change yourself. There will always be somebody who doesn't think you're good enough. There'll always be somebody who doesn't like you. I've said it before. It's amazing. Can't understand it, but I'm very Marmite. You either like me or you don't like me at all. Weirdly, the people who don't tend to like me really like my husband, which causes us all sorts of fun when it comes to social planning. It's okay not to be liked. It's okay to be scared about stepping out into the world socially. My final thought is, and I'm stealing this blatantly from a favourite author of mine, whether you say Kathleen or Caitlin Moran, who said in an article this weekend, don't eat your sisters. Very much so the case with younger women particularly. They are terrified of getting anything wrong because you guys are being bitches to each other, especially online. If you don't follow the right way of saying something, if you don't have the right opinion, if you don't have the right way of doing things, you're so quick to get outraged and put each other down, and actually you're not doing each other any favours at all. We are all just humans living our lives in our own way. We get mistakes made. We don't look the way you might want us to, or we might choose to look a way that you don't agree with. We might be fat or thin or big or small or religious or political or gay or straight or any one of a million things that make us all uniquely human and amazing. We learn and we grow and we develop by listening to and hearing each other, by shutting each other down, by calling each other names, by telling each other we're stupid or ridiculous or cancelled. Then you really do create a situation where everybody will become hugely socially anxious because nobody will ever get it right. Allow room to get it wrong. And don't eat your sisters. Be kind. It's not that hard. I'll see you later, guys.